Honestly, don't debate it. Don't overthink it. Just buy this watch. This is a Citizen watch that packs the best value punch that I have ever seen in a watch that I really like, would wear, and have worn over many of my other watches. If you want a light wearable aesthetic that's in $400 to $500 range, or you want to gift a watch to someone and that's kind of the budget you're looking for, or if you're just really interested in getting a titanium piece or an integrated sports watch piece or something that's scratch resistant, I mean, all of those tick the box with this watch. This is the Citizen Forza Mechanical. Now, there are different versions of the Forza Mechanical, and there's also the Forza 3-hand, which is an eco-drive version of the exact same watch. So instead of a mechanical movement, it's an eco-drive movement with a day-date complication instead of having a date complication that you get on the mechanical. So that's the difference between the two. The catalog of Citizen is confusing though. It's hard to find exactly the watch or the dial type. This watch dial has kind of a dark teal look to it. I don't really know how else to describe it. There's also a white version. There's a light blue, some would say Tiffany blue style version. There's also a dark blue version. Obviously blue being a very popular color, and so that's integrated into multiple of these different variants. Now, the thing that tricked me on this, the thing that I think stood out to me wasn't necessarily that it has a textured dial, which is interesting. It's more than that. It's the fact that this is a titanium watch that people typically are gonna buy a more expensive watch because it's made out of titanium now. For example, the Rolex Yachtmaster, like they released it in titanium and suddenly people are saying, okay, well now that watch looks interesting. Now that's something I would buy. And that's an over $10,000 watch. So why is this so less expensive also in titanium? Is titanium cheap, or is there something else that I'm missing here? Not to mention the fact that this actually includes finishing techniques that are bragged about by Grand Seiko in their Zaratsu polishing, which is trademarked and used only by Grand Seiko, but the exact same polishing technique is used on this watch, again for the same price point. So if we're looking at specs, if we're interested in specs, you need to buy this watch if that's the kind of buyer you are. But obviously watches are more than just that. And we will explain those specifications and exactly how they hit that titanium, that super durable coating, and that Zaratsu or Salaz polishing a little bit later. Wearability is one of the most important things with the watch. This is an incredibly comfortable watch. It's so light. I mean, you can see as I weigh it here, it is outrageously light, and that makes it an incredible wearing experience. I have it on my wrist right now. Typically I wear my watches tight. This is actually slightly loose. I probably need to move it up one micro adjustment here in the bracelet. Granted, there's only one micro adjustment, which isn't my favorite, and this watch feels really comfortable. I actually accidentally wore it loose the other day and didn't feel anything about it, or didn't really bother me because there wasn't enough weight shifting around for it to be something that concerned me. And the head of the watch is also very comfortable. You can see as it drapes around my wrist here, exactly how that watch head sits. And whether it's the lightness or the actual size and dimensions of the case head itself, of the watch head itself, it's very wearable. It's very comfortable. It looks great. I think these polished edges add a little bit of interest to it. Obviously, the dark gray nature of the titanium is noticeable and obvious, especially in bright light. So you do notice that it is a titanium or a darker gray finish watch, but it has a lot of things that people, I think, look at when they're looking at an integrated sports watch, myself included. And a watch like this sort of puts me off the idea of getting a Royal Oak or a Nautilus someday, because I have in my mind an aesthetic that I think is more functional and wearable for me. I like to wear my watches. I work in manufacturing, right? So I'm in and out of a warehouse, running a CNC machine, sometimes on a drill press, sometimes screwing things together. And I typically don't wear a watch that I'm not willing to scratch a little bit. And so Royal Oak and Nautilus are probably not on the list of watches that I'm gonna wear in that sort of environment. But I can have the exact same aesthetic with something like this. Now, the Tissot PRX was also a very interesting release and a very exciting release by Tissot. It also had the integrated sports style watch look. But what it didn't have for me was a textured dial that I was interested in. I think it was a little overboard on the texture for what I like. Again, it's a matter of taste. I like something that's a little bit more reserved, a little bit more subtle. In this box here, I've got a Grand Seiko Winter Edition, and that one has definitely more of a subtle texture pattern to it. And this mirrors that. You can actually see the Citizen and the Grand Seiko next to one another. You can see that, you know, shot for shot, while both are titanium and both are made in Japan or somewhere near Japan. In the case of the Citizen, I'm not entirely sure where it's manufactured, and both are automatic movements, there are obviously still differences in finishing. And you can see that mainly from an indice level. The Citizen is just going to be these applied indices, yes, but they're really small. They don't have that much extra polishing or finishing to them. Yes, there's lume on this watch where the Grand Seiko doesn't have it, but in general, the face of the watch doesn't give you the same sort of refined aesthetic that you get with the Grand Seiko, regardless of how the specs lay out on the sheet. Now, I mentioned it before, the polishing on this is Salaz, or S-A-L-L-A-Z, Salaz polishing. I've mentioned it before in my Grand Seiko review. That's the machine that they use. It's a lapping machine that they use to get a mirror or flat mirror finish on a watch. Now, Salaz, poorly translated in Japanese, turns into Zeratz, which then turns into Zeratsu if you're calling it the specific polishing within Japan. And Grand Seiko obviously has now branded that as their Zeratsu polishing, meaning that they use a lapping machine. Now, the difference here is obviously, at least Grand Seiko brags about the fact that theirs is hand finished with this lapping machine. Citizen, no doubt, does this by machine. There's no way any of these specs are made any other way. Coming from manufacturing, the way that they hit these specs at this price point was so interesting to me. See, titanium is a hard metal. It's not the easiest to work with. It's hard to machine because it wears out bits. It's hard to press into shape because it tends to deform. Now, what they found is that they actually were able to find a way to heat up the titanium and then press it into a shape. So you take basically a hot block of titanium and then press it into the shape of the case, or general shape of the case. And then you have to machine it in order to get some of these refined edges. And so to get to that next level, when you go to machining it, having the right lubricant when you're running those CNCs is something that I know from experience can be challenging. The count, the amount of lubricant, the right lubricant, all that stuff can change if you're gonna accidentally chip weld the bit or not. And that damages the bit and you need to swap it over, makes it expensive, makes it difficult to produce. It also gives you a less refined edge if you start using a dull bit or a bit that's chip welded. So all that plays into machining this titanium. So that's another hard part. Then you add to that, they're doing this Salaz polishing so that they get these flat mirror finishes on the titanium. Again, something that you see in Grand Seiko and say, yes, that how are they selling that for $6,000? This watch, compared to Grand Seiko, from a spec sheet level, has applied indices, has a texture dial, is made out of titanium, incorporates Salaz mirror flat polishing, and is automatic. So you say, okay, well, it makes sense that that's $6,000 watch with Grand Seiko. Why is this $400 or $500 or $600 at retail, which you can typically buy these. I bought this on eBay for about 400 bucks. And you can buy the Eco Drive version of this watch, I believe, direct from Citizen for around 500. So again, fantastic price point. Now, this has another trick up its sleeve in the fact that it's scratch resistant. Titanium typically does not have the best scratch resistant. This incorporates now a DLC type coating. Now they call it super titanium. All that means is that it's a base titanium with a coating on the outside to make it more scratch resistant. From what I could tell going through Citizen's website, that is a DLC-like coating, a diamond-like coating, which is a DLC. And obviously they're using a clear version of that DLC or diamond-like coating so that you don't see it. It doesn't change the color tone of the titanium, but you still get a lot of that scratch resistance that you're looking for. Now the watch obviously isn't perfect. You know, the clasp here is just a stamp clasp. It opens, it closes. It's got double press opening. It's not amazing, but it's okay. It's a pin and collar system on the bracelet, so break out your pin and collar tools if you're ready to size this yourself. The micro adjustment, there's one adjustment in the back. You can go forward or you can go back. Granted, we just experienced that same sort of thing with the Omega Akatera I just reviewed or the White Speedmaster I just reviewed, where you only get one adjustment. It's fine. The links are small enough you can find a good fit. It's light enough that I don't think it makes a big difference that you need to adjust it every few minutes like I do my Submariner. I have to adjust it all the time because it gets uncomfortable because it's so heavy. This doesn't have that issue. The date function, the cutout, I think is, you know, a little sloppy. If they'd rimmed that with metal so that it wasn't just like a hole in the dial, I think it would look a little bit nicer. The texture on the sub dial is okay. I think it's a little too bright and a little too polished for the texture that's around it. It doesn't need to say automatic and titanium on the watch. I know it's automatic. I know it's titanium. They don't need to be on the watch face, but it's fine. I think it balances the dial a little bit more. I just wish different words were there. The hands have a decent amount of lume, but the indices don't have that much lume. So you do notice a difference between how much lume you can see after you bake it in light. And the crown is a little small, but it has hacking, it has a date function. Like, you can take these gripes, but when you look at the price point in the end, I think that they kind of fall away. You know, the black chapter ring around the outside here is something that I really like because it insets that dial. It focuses your attention. It sort of isolates the indices and the texture that I really enjoy. Now, I've had the Tissot PRX. I did reviews on it, and this is by far my favorite compared to the two. Now, I like titanium. I like the coating on the outside, and that pushes me further into the camp of this watch. It makes it more wearable. And I think the case size also is perfect, whereas the Tissot was either too small or too big. Either way, I think Citizen knocked that out of the park. I really like this watch. I've been wearing it more than I expect. This watch I've actually picked up out of the box, and I'm gonna wear it to work today. Like, it just is that good, and it's one of those things that's hard to explain sometimes. But from spec standpoint, it makes sense why it's that good, and I think it's worth you going out and buying it at least to try it. And then if you don't like it, obviously you can move on. But if you're someone that has a collection like I do, and you like the idea of an integrated sports watch, but you don't really know if you want to buy one, go out and buy one of these. You don't care that it's automatic and you want the day date function, pick the Eco Drive. But this watch has been everywhere on the internet, and for good reason. So bravo, Citizen. And that's really all I have to say. What do you guys think? Do you own this? And what are your comments on, I guess, this watch, Citizen in general, and some of the other super titanium watches? It's a huge catalog that I didn't even know existed until recently. Till the next one, take care.